Week 12 of Aon's Public Affairs podcast was recorded June 24th, 2020.
Hello and welcome to Week 12 of the Public Affairs Podcast. Daniel Serota, based out of Chicago, Illinois. I am excited today to be joined by my good friend, Congressman Krishnamoorthi, Congressman from the 8th District of Illinois. Congressman, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, great to be with you, Dan.
Well, Congressman, let's dig in here. I wanted to get a sense from you on kind of how have you been handling this pandemic overall? You know, it's been a lot of things happening in Washington. How has this also impeded on Congress's ability to legislate? Being remote and being able to do this virtual has been interesting, to say the least.
Well, as you know, we've all had to adapt, and we've had to make sure that we could do our work while staying safe and keeping others safe. And so that's probably the biggest change. We've had to work remotely, obviously, like a lot of small business people and others, basically we've had to work from home. Although I come into the office a fair bit, it's pretty desolate, so it's easy to socially distance. And I think that the most important thing that we've learned is that the work continues even though we have to do it differently. The other thing we've learned is that there's a lot of challenges out there. A lot of people are hurting. We have a health pandemic, but we also have an economic pandemic, you could say, in the sense that unfortunately, we had to shut down the economy, put it into a medically induced coma, so to speak, to battle the virus. But fortunately, in Illinois, with good corporate citizens like Aon, as well as excellent leadership from our governor and others, we've managed to battle this virus to a point where we can safely reopen the economy. We're going into phase 4 Friday, and we have to continue to safely reopen and make sure that we save livelihoods at the same time that we save lives.
Well, Congressman, Aon, we appreciate the nice words, and Aon has actually put together a coalition called Work, Travel, and Convene, which is really focused on that. It's how do we safely reopen? How do we work together as employers to create a standard, create this new way of really making sure that our employees, our clients, and others are doing it in a right way. And, one of the biggest things that we continue to hear is around workforce and how we're going to be able to continue, unemployment is at a high. We're at the point where employers are needing to kind of dig in and figure out how to be able to grow their workforce, how to get people back to work that are furloughed or back on the unemployment ways. Are there any new legislations or things that you're working on to kind of encourage that? And I know, just to add, your great leadership during the Perkins money that really helped the state move forward on some training initiatives. Anything else that you're working on? I always talk about apprenticeships as a way to be able to get employers back. Would be interested to kind of hear your perspective there.
Well, thank you for asking, and thank you to Aon, as well as your clients and others who've really promoted career technical education, apprenticeships, learn and earn opportunities to address the skills gap, as well as to put people on a road to the middle class. I personally think, and my office is exploring how to do this, we have to take advantage of opportunities that exist now when people, unfortunately, may be unemployed, but who might be in a position where they can acquire new skills to re-enter the workforce in better shape than they were before. And how do we provide resources at the federal level to make that possible? And so my office is exploring ways to do that in partnership with the private sector and states. But quite frankly, we all have to figure out, how do we return not to a new normal, but a new better? We want to get to a better status quo after this than we were before. Because let's face it, we are going through a crisis, but we don't want people to feel that coming out on the other side of this, we didn't learn things that would allow us to apply lessons to get to a better place. For instance, I'll just give you a couple examples. How do we get to a better telehealth system? How do we get to a better e-learning and distance learning system? How do we get to a place where people can do career technical education and upgrade their skills at home? How can they telework better and so forth? These are all systems or activities that we have to perform better now that we know that they are needed. And so that's what I'm hoping that we can work on.
And I couldn't agree more, Congressman. And I also will say public-private partnerships are going to be so critical during this time more than ever, using assets that the private sector can help with, the public sector can help with, and just continue to grow that narrative in working together. So I appreciate your leadership in bringing that up, because I do think that is going to be an important driver as we start getting the economy moving forward. And I love the way you said it, a new better, which I think is definitely the way everyone wants to be able to move forward. So, Congressman, I want to, we came through the beginning of this pandemic with different economic packages. We saw the CARES Act pass. We saw the Democrats introduce the HEROES Act. Where do you see the next prospects of a new package coming to light in the near term?
I think that there will be another package. That's my gut instinct, at least before the election. I think it's going to continue to have a healthcare component to it, in the sense that, let's face it, we're in the middle of a public health pandemic, and we have to battle the virus. We have to make sure that we can assure the health of the American people. That's the number one priority. That being said, I do think that the next package will include more aid for state and local governments who are going through a lot. I'm getting emails and phone calls from Republican mayors and Democratic mayors and others who are seeing a dramatic shortfall in revenue because, quite frankly, tax collections have gone down as the economy has gone down. We don't want to see those municipalities and so forth end up laying off first responders and others who are vital to battling the pandemic. And if they do those layoffs, it will really deepen the recession. We don't need that. So I'd like to see aid to our state and local governments who provide vital services for our small businesses and others. I'd like to see greater assistance to businesses and small businesses, because although the PPP was a start, it's not enough. And we're also seeing, entire sectors of the economy that will need assistance because they are not going to be able to see the levels of economic activity that they did before, because we're reducing the assembly of people. We're encouraging people not to congregate. So what are the sectors of economy that are most affected? We're talking about tourism. We're talking about retail. We're talking about hospitality. We're talking about any place where you see large gatherings. And so I think that we're going to see more assistance in those areas going forward. And it turns out that they end up taking about 20% of the economy. Those are big parts of the economy.
And especially for the city of Chicago. I mean, definitely a huge part of, money coming in is tourism.
Yeah, tourism. Yeah, I mean, think about summer in Chicago. You see it, Daniel. Downtown, usually there are huge throngs of people all over the place. And this year it's going to be less as people kind of shy away from that. And so, I'm concerned about those vendors, everyone from the mom and pop vendor selling their trinkets to our airlines, which are just not going to see the same volume. And so we have to think about all of them and the sectors that are affected by their activity.
Yeah. And Congressman, you brought up, and appreciate that insight about the package. What else do you expect in the upcoming months leading up to the election that you think could possibly happen? Because as we all know, we have a presidential election upon us, congressional races, the Senate. What different public policy initiatives do you think, are going to move forward?
There's so many sectors that are affected. And so I think a lot of these different sectors are going to ask for legislation that affects them. For instance, the education sector, higher education is going to be affected because a lot of kids are not going to go back to a residential college setting. And I think their families are going to be concerned about not sending them back. So they might have to distance learn, but those colleges and universities are going to face a lot of financial challenges because of that. We're going to see the commercial real estate sector need assistance because, as you know, a lot of them are not going to be able to meet their debt obligations, given that a lot of tenants aren't paying rent, given that a lot of hotels are seeing occupancy rates that are far below their normal levels. And so, for instance, the commercial mortgage-backed security arena is going to need some assistance. We're going to need to make sure that that doesn't become some kind of ticking time bomb the same way that we had, back in 2008, the mortgage-backed security woes that we saw back then. I think that we're going to see some need for additional assistance with personal protective equipment and other aspects of the public healthcare arena that still need attention because we're not where we need to be, and testing is not where it needs to be. So all of those and other priorities are going to need to be dealt with. I also think that workers and employers are going to need protections. I think that, as we go back to work, we're going to need some standards, and we're going to need to make sure that everyone can go back safely. So a lot of different areas are going to need addressing.
Well, good. And it seems like Congress will be busy, focused on these public policy actions and working towards to help people that need it. And look, Congressman, thank you again for coming on the podcast. Thank you for your continued leadership, and know that I hope we can be partners moving forward and continue to be partners, especially when we're doing this Work, Travel, and Convene coalition, as we start taking benchmarking from a wide range of companies and working towards this new better, which I think you hit it perfectly. And I think the public sector and private partnership is going to be critical as we continue to create public policies in the future.
Well, thank you. Daniel, Aon is in the business of helping their clients and trying to mitigate risk. And now we know about new risks that we face that we've never faced before. So first of all, I hope that all of your clients and their families and your partners stay safe. Secondly, whatever my office can do to be of assistance, please let me know. And that goes to you as well as all your clients and partners. And then finally, the only way we're going to get through this is together. Let's set aside some of our other differences. Let's join together, lock arms, and battle this virus together. If we do so, we will come out stronger, more resilient, and we'll open up the economy and make sure everyone can get back to work in their respectful professions, and we'll come out a stronger America and a stronger world. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thank you all for joining the podcast this week. We look forward for you to tune in next week, and everyone please stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
This information is a resource for Aon clients and business partners. It is intended to provide general guidance of potential exposures and is not intended to provide legal, regulatory, or medical advice. Due to the dynamic nature of infectious diseases, Aon cannot be held liable for the guidance provided. We encourage listeners to seek additional information from credible sources. Thank you.